Since you mentioned earlier that India's not so strong on the hardware side, the entire world depends on like these semiconductors that Taiwan is making, and the Chinese Communist Party has made very clear that they want to develop their technology, but they can only do that through stealing. What does it mean if the Chinese Communist Party is able to take over Taiwan's tech hardware?
It's not going to happen. For the simple reason that tech hardware is about 15 jumbo jets taking off from Taipei and landing somewhere else. It's brain power. It's not hardware. The hardware is what is made by brain power. Frankly, if you get a lot of, you have a lot of Indian software engineers who have been very active in creating the kind of thing, not so much in Taiwan, but over the last 7 or 8 years now, there's a significant and a rising curve of Indian techies in Taiwan. A very rising and significant curve of Indian techies. So frankly, it's about a little more than a dozen, maybe 20 jumbo jets, and that's your tech. The Chinese, frankly, the Communist Party, the Soviet Party was smarter. They had these little bubbles where you had these scientists. The scientists operate as though they're in America. They would even bash Brezhnev in public and say, "Oh, these guys are idiots." Then the local party secretary would be called a dolt to his face. They allowed all that because the scientists think freely, and if they don't think freely, they don't get. Frankly, under Xi Jinping, in my view, innovation in China is now slowly getting snuffed out. Because it's to have a free mind in China, free mind is contagious. A controlled mind is much less contagious. A free mind is contagious. And so he doesn't want a free mind anywhere. And I think, therefore, you'll find that what tech is there in China is basically Taiwanese in China, willingly or unwillingly, and stolen tech. And of course, if I may say so, people who are more loyal to CCP than they are to their passports, working in different countries of the world who are involved in tech. Fortunately, not a very large number. More and more people are getting turned away from PRC because of the CCP. More and more are. But you do have some people who are bought into this idea of the Han supremacy or whatever you call it. But frankly, I'm not worried about that happening. And I don't believe that Taiwanese tech, if it were to be, God forbid, I don't think it's ever going to happen. There may be a fight, there may be an invasion, but I think the Taiwanese will prevail. But if, God forbid, they don't prevail, that tech industry is going to migrate. And that is one, I'll tell you, that's why, for example, TSMC, I'm very certain it's going to come to India. One of the reasons is very clear. We have a border with China. We also have nuclear weapons. They can incinerate Delhi, we will incinerate Beijing, and we will incinerate Shanghai as well. And we have enough left over to incinerate China 5 times over. So the prospect of anything other than a border skirmish between India and China is, I think, a little unreal. 2 nuclear powers fighting each other, it doesn't happen unless NATO and Russia go to war with each other. And you'll recall, I've been very skeptical of the Ukraine war for quite some time. But I remember when I first appeared in the channel also, I made some very skeptical remarks about this Western response to Ukraine. And I said, this is crazy. It's not going to succeed. We know Russians very well. In fact, if I may say so, on the 27th of February, 28th of February, there's going to be a major India-Russia track 2 bilateral in a very important city in India. And on the Indian side, I would say I'm a key organizer of that, possibly whatever. And on the Russian side, we have individuals who are in think tanks that are very close to the Kremlin. And we are both organizing it because the Russians are still our good friends. We have multiplied trade with Russia. No sanctions were put on India. Frankly, there is stealth sanctions. For example, the EU, you've got certain, they tell universities you can have projects with XXX country, and suddenly India is missing from the list. The largest population in the world, the largest democracy in the world, the largest number of, frankly, educated people in a democracy, it's missing because they have this little stealth sanction, Victoria Nuland kind of sanctions, in which there was a time when it took 3 years or 4 years for an Indian to get a visa to go to the US, and a Chinese could get a visa in 3 or 4 days. So I'd like to say that, yes, they will have to change the mindset. And in my view, it's going to be brutal. Those who they believe cannot be re-educated are going to land up in concentration camps, and many of them will end up the way Alexei Navalny has ended up. Now, as I said, India and Russia are good friends. Prime Minister Modi and President Putin are good friends. And frankly, that friendship was very helpful, as well as our outreach to Zelensky in ensuring that our Indian students came back. And Arab students, Pakistani students, Bangladeshi students, Vietnam, all kinds of students came back waving the Indian flag because of the good relations that we have with Russia. And the fact the Ukrainians don't want to, in a sense, go on our wrong side. We are still very friendly with them. Like we're very friendly with Damascus, with Bashar Assad. We were very friendly with Bashar. We are very friendly with him. And we have got that. So tomorrow there's a problem somewhere in Yemen. I mean, some of these bad actors there was a time when we wanted to extricate the Indians from there. And these people who are bad actors in the Red Sea, frankly, we are totally opposed to that. And our Navy defends our interests there. But these very people ensured that all the Indians left safely. So we have a fairly good relationship. We have a good relationship with Iran. We have an excellent relationship with Israel. We have very good relations with Russia, despite some of the people in the Biden camp who believe that America is a corner of Europe that's been just floated across the Atlantic. We still have very good relations with the United States, and they're growing every month. They're growing exponentially. In security, in defense, a lot of it is not very public, but it's there. If a Republican government comes, I'll be frank with you, it'll be 10 times better.
We make a good point about India's unique alliances around the world. I'm curious, how does India balance the fact that Russia also has this relationship with China, especially moving forward if there's a conflict between India and China over the border, Taiwan? How do you handle the fact that Russia also has this relationship with China, which is India's enemy?
Like, which side is Russia going to pick? Is that kind of what you're wondering?
Kind of.
Well, in my view, I may be totally wrong. I don't think the Russians are particularly in awe of the Chinese.
Definitely not.
Pushed in a corner. And I think one reason why it's important that India and Russia, dosti, which is called friendship, continue, is that the Russians believe that there is still an alternative to China. And one day, these idiotic people in the West will also come around to the view that Russia can do what China did. It stabbed the Soviet Union in the back. Now, it's crazy in Cold War 2.0 to basically, antagonize Russia and push it into China's camp. You're helping your worst enemy. I don't understand Western strategic thinkers, frankly. And this big chasing of Ukraine, I said from the beginning, the West is going to lose the rest because of this obsession with European power Ukraine. There are people who are suffering in Yemen and other places. Look at this aid bill, for example. I mean, as someone who has basically stood by a strong India-US relationship, I've been called, many things. I'm disgusted that Joe Biden believes that Ukraine deserves 60 billion, Taiwan deserves pennies, and Israel, of course, deserves, again, nothing compared to what Ukraine is getting. It is disgusting. And it solidifies the belief when you look at the travel schedules of Blinken and Sullivan and all these guys. 80% of their travel was transatlantic. 80% of their mind space is Europe. So frankly, we are very clear that we are going to one of the important points behind this particular bilateral is the track to bilateral. Government has nothing to do with it, but you have influential people, coming in on both sides. People whose thinking, I think, has an impact on the leaderships of both countries, is to show the Russians you're not alone, brother. You don't have to, think that you're being fed to the Chinese. We are there. And we don't like the CCP at all. And, we are the only country that has actually shed blood with at the PLA and shed PLA blood. Our calculation is that they lost about 60 people. We lost 20. We admitted that. They finally admitted about 8 or 9. But they lost 60. We got satellite things of that. So we are the only two armies that have shed blood, and we are ready to shed blood any time. The Indian soldier is waiting for an opportunity to confront the Chinese soldier. The Indian Air Force is waiting. The Indian Navy is waiting. The Navy is all over the Indo-Pacific. The Air Force is very active. We have a lot of Air Force activity on the India-China border. We have a lot of military activity there. And Mr. Xi Jinping is going to find out that if he comes to India and invades India, that's, for our point of view, we'll find out who's the better soldier. A single child of parents who are single, I mean, or the Indian soldier who comes from a rough background, who has seen his family suffer. Some have died of disease or poverty. The kind of soldier Mao's PLA was. That's the kind of soldier we have. And Xi Jinping's soldiers, frankly, are marshmallows compared to Mao's soldiers. And in other words, they are marshmallows compared to our soldiers. That's why I've been saying we don't want ground troops. We want US Air Force. We want US Navy to help us, intelligence, equipment. That's what we want. I mean, what you guys are, you're doing in Ukraine. You're not sending, of course, you've got people there who are training. And that happened in Vietnam. I mean, frankly, it's a pretty dangerous slope. We don't want any of that. We don't need training. Our training is entirely different. But we are having a lot of co-working with NATO militaries. And I think we are co-working extremely well with our own tactics, our own training, our own mindsets, our own culture. So, as far as Taiwan is concerned, I'd like to say, first of all, invading and occupying is not going to be easy. This election proves it.